So, hello and welcome back yet again to another evening with Sir Walter Scott. I should look up and find out what he was knighted for. Probably not for writing books, although, I don't know. What can you be knighted for? After all, Sean Connery got knighted. Did he get knighted for acting? These are the questions that, just occupy my little brain from time to time, and I'm like, and then I forget about them by the time I get back to the computer and should be looking them up. I totally blank on it. So if anybody knows what Sir Walter Scott got knighted for, let me know in the comments down below. I'm curious. And if anyone already did, I'm sorry, because brain of a goldfish. 5 seconds later, it's going to be gone. Anyway, we left poor Isaac in dire straits. Please tell me his name is Isaac, or I'm going to be feeling very, very stupid. Yes. We left poor Isaac in dire straits. He has been told that he has to pay a ginormous ransom to get out of this prison by Monsieur Fondeboeuf, who is a terrible person. And Fondeboeuf also told Isaac that it's too late. He already gave his daughter to the Templar. Ick. Let's just go with ick. These people who think that they can just hand out maidens like they're candy, I think we can all agree that's an ick. Other than that, it's it's a day, it's a week. It's been raining a lot here, like a lot. People always talk about spring rain, but I think they discount the fact that fall is also a very rainy season most years, and this year it is definitely being a rainy season, which leaves me a little bit afraid that the weatherman is actually going to be right and that this year we're going to have a lot of real snow again. Which reminds me, I'll probably forget, but I should get my snowblower serviced so I can actually use it this year. Because last year I tried using it and it never actually started. And I meant to have it looked at this spring and I forgot. We'll see if I actually remember. Anyway, enough of me and my memory problems. It is time to jump back in and read Ivanhoe. But before we do that, we have to start with our pre chapter quote, which is from Two Gentlemen of Verona. Nay, if the gentle spirit of moving words can no way change you to a milder form, I'll woo you like a soldier at arm's end, and love you against the nature of love force you. Two Gentlemen of Verona. Well, that was a problematic passage now, wasn't it? At least the way I took it. Hopefully this won't be a problematic chapter. I guess we'll have to wait and see as we jump back into Ivanhoe by Sir Walter Scott with chapter 23. The apartment to which the Lady Rowena had been introduced was fitted up with some rude attempts at ornament and magnificence, and her being placed there might be considered as a peculiar mark of respect not offered to the other prisoners. But the wife of Fondeboeuf, for whom it had been originally furnished, was long dead, and decay and neglect had impaired the few ornaments with which her taste had adorned it. The tapestry hung down from the walls in many places, and in others it was tarnished and faded under the effects of the sun, or tattered and decayed by age. Desolate, however, as it was, this was the apartment of the castle which had been judged the most fitting for the accommodation of the Saxton heiress, and here she was left to meditate upon her fate until the actors in this nefarious drama had arranged the several parts in which each of them was to perform. This had been settled in a council held by Fondeboeuf, de Bracy, and the Templar, in which, after a long and warm debate, concerning the several advantages in which each insisted upon deriving from their particular share in this enterprise, they had finally determined the fate of all of their unhappy prisoners. It was about the hour of noon, therefore, when De Bracy, for whose advantage the expedition had been planned, appeared to prosecute his views upon the hand and the possessions of the Lady Rowena. The interval had not entirely been bestowed in holding counsel with his confederates, for De Bracy had found leisure to decorate his person with all the foppery of the times. His green cassock and vizard were now flung aside. His long, luxuriant hair was trained to flow in quaint tresses down his richly furred coat. His beard was close shaved, his doublet reached to the middle of his leg, and the girdle which secured it, and at the same time supported his ponderous sword, was embroidered and embossed with gold. We've already noticed the extravagant fashion of the shoes of this time period, and the points of Maurice de Bracy might have challenged the prize of extravagance, with the gayest being turned up and twisted like the horns of a ram. Such was the dress of a gallant of the period, and in the present instance that effect was aided by the handsome person and good demeanor of the bearer, whose manners partook alike of the grace of a courtier and the frankness of a soldier. He saluted Rowena by doffing his velvet bonnet, garnished with a golden brooch representing Saint Michael trampling down the Prince of Evil. With this, he gently motioned the lady to a seat, and as she still retained her standing position, the knight ungloved his right hand and motioned to conduct her there. But Rowena declined, by her gesture, the proffered compliment, and she replied, "If I be in the presence of my jailer, Sir Knight, nor will circumstances allow me to think otherwise, it best becomes this prisoner to remain standing until she learns of her doom." "Alas, fair Rowena," said De Bracy, "you are in the presence of your captive, not your jailer, and it is from your fair eyes that De Bracy must receive that doom which you so fondly expect from him." "I don't know you, sir," said the lady, drawing herself up with all the pride of offended rank and beauty. "I know you not, and the insolent familiarity with which you apply to me the jargon of a troubadour forms no apology for the violence of a robber." "To thyself, fair maid," said De Bracy, "to thine own charms be ascribed whatever I have done, which pass the respect due to her whom I have chosen the queen of my heart and the lodestar of my eyes." "I repeat to you, Sir Knight, that I know you not, and that no man wearing chain and spurs ought thus to introduce himself upon the presence of an unprotected woman." "That I am unknown to you," said De Bracy, "is indeed my misfortune, yet let me hope that De Bracy's name has not always been unspoken when the minstrels or heralds have praised the deeds of chivalry, whether in the lists or upon the battlefield." "To heralds and to minstrels, then, leave your praise, Sir Knight," said Rowena, "more suiting for their mouths than for your own. And tell me which of them shall record in song or in book of tourney the memorable conquest of this night, a conquest obtained over an old man, followed by a few timid hinds, and its booty an unfortunate maiden transported against your will to the castle of a robber." "You're unjust, Lady Rowena," said the knight, biting his lips in confusion, and speaking in a tone more natural to him than the one of affected gallantry which he had at first adopted. Yourself free from passion, you can allow no excuse for the frenzy of another, even if it was caused by your own beauty. I pray you, Sir Knight, said Rowena, to cease a language so commonly used by strolling minstrels that it becomes not the mouth of knights or nobles. Certes, you constrain me to sit down, since you enter upon such commonplace terms, of which each vile crowder hath a stock that might last from now till Christmas. Proud damsel, said De Bracy, incised at finding his gallant style procured him nothing but contempt from her. Proud damsel, you shall be as proudly encountered. Know then that I have supported my pretensions to your hand in the way that best suited your character. It is meeter for thy humor to be wooed with bow and bill than set in terms and courtly language, I guess. Courtesy of tongue, said Rowena, when it is used to veil churlishness of deed, is but a knight's girdle around the breast of a clown. I wonder not that the restraint appears to gall you. More it were for your honor to have retained the dress and language of an outlaw than to veil the deeds of one under an affection of gentle language and actions. You counsel well, lady, said the Norman. And in the bold language which best justifies bold action, I tell you, you shall never leave this castle, or you shall leave it as Maurice de Bracy's wife. I am not wont to be baffled in my enterprises, nor need a noble Norman scrupulously to vindicate his conduct to the Saxon maiden whom he distinguishes by offering his hand. You're proud, Rowena, and you are the fitter to be my wife. By what other means could you be raised to high honor and princely places, saving by my alliance? How else would you escape from the mean precincts of a country grange, where the Saxons herd with the swine which form their wealth? You could take my seat, honored as you should be, or shall be, amongst all of England that is distinguished by beauty or dignified by power. Sir Knight, said Rowena, the grange which you condemn has been my shelter from infancy, and trust me, when I leave it, should that day ever arrive, it shall be with one who has not learned to despise the dwelling and the manners in which I have been brought up. I guess your meaning, my lady, said De Bracy, though you may think it lies too obscure for my comprehension, but dream not that Richard Coeur de Lion will ever resume his throne, far less that Wilfred of Ivanhoe, his minion, will ever lead you to his footstool, to there be welcomed as the bride of a favorite. Another man might feel jealousy will he touch this string, but my purpose cannot be changed by a passion so childish and so hopeless. Know, my lady, that this rival is in my power, and that it rests but with me to betray the secret of his being within the castle to Front de Bœuf, whose jealousy would be far more fatal than my own. Wilfred, here, said Rowena in disdain. That is as true as that Front de Bœuf is his rival. De Bracy looked at her steadily for a moment. Were you really ignorant of this? He said. Did you not know that Wilfred of Ivanhoe was the one on the litter, a meeting conveyance for this crusader whose doughty arm was to reconquer the Holy Sepulchre, I think? And then he laughed scornfully. And if he is here, said Rowena, compelling herself to a tone of indifference, although trembling with an agony of apprehension which she could not suppress. In what is he the rival of Fondeboeuf? Or what has he to fear beyond a short imprisonment and an honorable ransom according to the uses of chivalry? Rowena, said De Bracy, are you too deceived by the common error of your sex, who thinks that there can be no rivalry but that respecting their own charms? Do you not know that there is jealousy of ambition, of wealth, as well as of love? And that this, our host Fondeboeuf, will push from his road any who opposes his claim to the fair barony of Ivanhoe as quickly, eagerly, and unscrupulously as if he were preferred to him by some blue-eyed maiden. But consent to my suit, my lady, and the wounded champion shall have nothing to fear from Fondeboeuf. Who else mayest mourn for, as in the hands of one who has never shown compassion. For the love of heaven, save him, said Rowena, her firmness giving way under terror for her lover's impending fate. I can. I will. It is my purpose, said De Bracy. For when Rowena consents to be the bride of De Bracy, who is it shall dare put forth a violent hand upon her kinsman, the son of her guardian, the companion of her childhood? But it is thy love that must buy his protection. I'm not a romantic fool, not fool enough to further the fortune or avert the fate of one who is likely to be a successful obstacle between me and my wishes. Use your influence with me in his behalf, and he will be safe. Refuse, Wilfred dies, and thou thyself art not any closer to freedom. Your language, said Rowena, hath in its indifferent bluntness something which cannot be reconciled with the horrors that you express. I don't believe that your purpose is so wicked or your power so great. Flatter yourself, then, with that belief, said De Bracy, until time proves it false. Your lover lies wounded in this castle, your preferred lover. He is a bar between Fondeboeuf and that which Fondeboeuf loves better than either ambition or beauty. What will it cost, beyond the blow of a poniard or the thrust of a javelin, to silence him forever? No. Were Fondeboeuf afraid to justify a deed so open, let the doctor but give his patient the wrong draught. Let the chamberlain or the nurse who tends him pluck the pillow from his head, and Wilfred, in his present condition, is dead without even a drop of blood. Cedric as well. And Cedric as well, said Rowena, my noble, my generous guardian. I deserve the evil I have encountered for forgetting his fate, even in that of his sons. Cedric's fate also depends upon your determination, said De Bracy, and I will leave you alone to ruminate upon it. Here, too, Rowena had sustained her part during this trying scene with undismayed courage, but it was because she had not considered the danger as serious or imminent. Her disposition was naturally that which people consider as proper to those of fair complexions. She was mild, timid, and gentle, but this had been tempered and hardened by the circumstances of her education. Accustomed to see the will of all, even Cedric sufficiently arbitrary with others, and watched them give way before her wishes, she had acquired that sort of courage and self confidence which arises from the habitual and constant deference of the circle in which we move. She could scarce conceive of the possibility of her will being opposed, far less than that of being treated with total disregard. Her haughtiness and habit of domination was therefore a fictitious character induced over that which was natural to her, and it deserted her when her eyes were opened to the extent of her danger, as well as the danger to her lover and guardian, and when she found her will, the slightest expression of which was wont to command it respect and attention, now placed in opposition to a man of strong, fierce, and determined mind who possessed advantage over her and was completely willing to use it, well, Rowena quailed before him. After casting her eyes around, as if to look for the aid which was nowhere to be found, and after a few broken interjections, she raised her hand to heaven and burst into a passion of uncontrolled vexation and sorrow. It was impossible to see so beautiful a creature in such extremity without feeling for her, and De Bracy was not unmoved, though he was yet more embarrassed than touched. He had in truth gone too far to recede, and yet, in Rowena's present condition, she could not be acted on either by argument or threat. He paced the apartment to and fro, now vainly exhorting the terrified maiden to compose herself, and then hesitatingly concerning his own line of conduct, apologizing. If, he thought, I should be moved by tears and the sorrow of this damsel, what should I reap but the loss of the hopes for which I have encountered to take so much risk, and the ridicule of Prince John and his comrades? And yet, he told himself, I feel myself ill framed for the part in which I'm playing. I cannot look on such a fair face while it's disturbed with agony, or on those eyes when they're drowning in tears. I wish that she had retained her original haughtiness of disposition, or that I was a little bit more like Fawn de Boeuf, and having a hard heart. Agitated by all this, he could only bid the unfortunate Rowena to be comforted, and to assure her that as yet she had no reason for the excess of despair to which she was now giving way. But in this task of consolation, De Bracy was interrupted by the horn, hoarse winding blow far and keen, which had at the same time been alarming the other inmates of the castle, and interrupted their several plans of avarice and license. Of them all, perhaps De Bracy least regretted the interruption, for his conference with the Lady Rowena had arrived at the point where he found it equally difficult to go on or to leave. And here, we cannot but think it necessary to offer some better proof than the incidents of an idle tale to vindicate the melancholy representation of the manners which have just been laid before you, the reader. It's grievous to think that those valiant barons, whose stand against the crown the liberties of England were indebted to for their existence, should themselves have been such dreadful oppressors and capable of excesses contrary not only to the laws of England, but those of nature and humanity. But, alas, we have only to extract from the industrious Henry one of the numerous passages which he had collected from contemporary historians to prove that fiction itself can hardly reach the dark reality in the horrors of that time period. The descriptions given by the author of the Saxon Chronicle of the cruelties exercised in the reign of King Stephen by the great barons and lords of the castle, who were all Normans, shows a strong proof of the excesses of which they were capable when their passions were inflamed. They grievously opposed the poor people by building castles, and when they were built, they filled them with wicked men or even devils who seized both men and women who they imagined had any money, then threw them into prison and put them to more cruel tortures than the martyrs even endured. They suffocated some in mud, suspended others by the feet or the head or the thumbs, lighting fires beneath them. They squeezed the heads of some with knotted cords until they pierced their brains, while others they threw into dungeons swarming with serpents, snakes, and toads. But it would be cruel to put the reader to the pain of perusing the remainder of these descriptions. As another instance of these bitter fruits of conquest, and perhaps the strongest that could be quoted, we may mention that the Empress Matilda, though a daughter of the King of Scotland, and afterwards both the Queen of England and the Empress of Germany, the daughter, the wife, and the mother of monarchs, had been obliged during her early residence for education in England to pretend to be a nun, as the only means of escaping the licentious pursuit of the Norman noblemen. This excuse she stated before a great council of clergy in England as the sole reason for her having taken on the religious habit. The assembled clergy admitted to the validity of the plea, and the notoriety of the circumstances upon which it was founded, giving thus an indubitable and most remarkable testimony to the existence of that disgraceful license by which those ages were stained. It was a matter of public knowledge, they said, that after the conquest of King William, his Norman followers, elated by this victory, acknowledged no law but their own wicked pleasure, and not only despoiled the conquered Saxons of their lands and their goods, but invaded the honor of their wives and their daughters with the most unbridled license. And hence it was back then common for matrons and maidens of noble families to assume the veil and to take shelter in convents, not called there by the vocation of God, but just to preserve their honor from the unbridled wickedness of men. Such and so licentious were the times, as announced by the public declaration of the assembled clergy, recorded by Edmer, and we need add nothing more to vindicate the prohibition of the scenes that we have now detailed, and the ones that we are about to detail, upon the more apocryphal authority of Wadamar, M.S. And that somewhat confusing page and a half is where the chapter ends. I mean, it basically just means, Rowena, you in danger, girl. To quote, I almost said Whitney Houston, Whoopi Goldberg, you in danger, girl. Ah, okay. Yet again, all of the men that we have met, I was going to say all, but no, Robin of Locksley seems to be so far good. King Richard, the Black Knight, also seems to be being cast as good, but most of the men that we've spent any time with need to be grounded, put in the corner, or just tossed into their own dungeons. Yeah, ew. Anyway, that's where we're going to leave it today. I hope you enjoyed that chapter as much as I did. Oh, Rowena, you need to also buck up. Just because somebody thwarted your will once, that's no excuse to crumble. Anyway, we're going to leave it there today. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you enjoyed that chapter. Please do leave me a thumbs up on your way out. It does always make me smile. Consider heading over to my Patreon if you want to. It should be fairly easy to get to. I think I'm just Christine Bookworm on there. Worm with a Y, because, why not? And I will see you next time.